We are back for another book discussion. And this book is by Lori Welton. It is My Bare Naked Truth, One Butterfly at a Time. I'm going to move in here so you can see how beautiful the illustration is here on the cover. And Lori painted that. So it is so beautiful. I'm excited to chat with you about this book. And I've made lots of little notes in here. But what I wanted to say first of all, when you first gave me this book, the first of the year is January 1st.
It was,
wasn't it? When I went to see my daughter afterwards, the very next time, I took it with me and I showed her because I thought how beautiful it is, and the layout that you've done here. So it is dedicated to the daughter she never had. And my favorite parts, that part of what you've done, is at the end of each chapter it's thoughts for Ashley.
Yes.
The daughter you never had. And I just thought, I was like how beautiful is that? And like I want to do this for Sky, the daughter I did have, you know?
Exactly.
Because I don't do these things. I'm like, this is such a...
It was things that I journaled every day, because it was like when stuff would happen, you would think about it. And, I have 3 boys, so yes, I would still transmit and say those lessons and talk to them about it. But it's not the same with a daughter.
No.
And some of those things, it's like I wish that I could share it with somebody. And to share it with friends or a woman, it's kind of like they've already passed that. It needed to be somebody that would learn from it, or what I was thinking at the time.
Yeah.
And she always popped up in my head every day. Still does.
So beautiful. So beautiful. So I will give a few trigger warning markers on this. So there's discussion of miscarriages. There's a lot of hard things that's talked about in this book. It is done so elegantly and gracefully.
Thank you.
So beautiful. So if things like that is hard for you to listen to, and just being aware, you might not want to, or you might want to just be gentle with yourself as we go through the call, because I don't know what we'll discuss entirely.
No.
We do this by the seat of our pants. And so I need a pillow booster seat.
I know.
As speak as the seat of my pants. I also love how you put the little quotes in here.
I love the quotes.
A lot of quotes.
Yes.
There was some I'm like, oh, I never heard that one before.
The quotes got me through my life and still do. I have a book of them.
Yeah.
And it's like when I'm upset over something or need a reminder, pulling out the book of quotes just makes it easier.
This one, chapter 1, my foundation. Children are like wet cement. Whatever falls on them makes an impression.
Yes.
Dr. Chaim Ganot. I love that quote. And what a imagery, what a vision.
It's so true, though.
It's so true. There's sponges. So funny. Yeah. So fabulous. So I think that what I want to ask you is, what made you want to write the book?
Well, several reasons. One, I've always wanted to write a book. Whether it would have been this kind of book or not, I don't know. I'm very detail oriented, and I'm very graphic when I speak. And most people, I either talk too much or say too much. And if I explain like something that happened, at the end of most conversations, either people are like enlightened that it was so detailed, like they feel like they were there, or somebody would just say, wow, that was a lot. It just depended on the person. They either were into it or not. Either way, I didn't. But I also, writing this particular book, through the years, meeting several different people at different ages. And I'd have a conversation with hit and miss little pieces and parts of my life with them over what they'd come to me and say. So most of it was in the restaurant, because that's where I was exposed the most to. And when people would, especially young girls, would bring up certain things like the miscarriages or something happened with their family or their mom or their dad. And then I'd hear their story and I'd try to help them, you know, get through like, it's going to be this or it'll be okay or whatever it was that I said or didn't say afterwards. I did it so much that I first thought I needed to do like being a counselor or something because I thought, you know, you get paid for all this advice I was doing, you know. And it was like I didn't mind, but it was just kind of like I'd see them change or it'd help them, and it made me feel good. Well, then I went through a whole long years of patch of stuff of the hardships that's in the book, and then meeting you turned and changed a whole lot of things, and coming on the other side of it, it became a book to, one, help others. If somebody can relate and understand that there's good on the other side of the bad, or you can change it, or there is a light at the end of the tunnel, you can heal it. Well, it was part of my healing because doing it, I wrote it 12 times. And some of it was because there was so much anger fueled some of it, depression fueled some of it, heartache fueled a lot of it. And getting to the other side after writing it and having peace with it, I felt like if I could at least get one person to acknowledge it, it wasn't about how much I'd make or doing it or anything else. It was just, if it can help somebody, then why not?
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I know just from the very beginning, I made a note here where you're talking about being domesticated and how we domesticate people just the same way as we domesticate animals. Don McGill talks about that in the 4 Agreements. And also how you're creating or handing down belief systems in that.
That was like my true awakening, was realizing that it was taught to me, not just who I was, but I learned it because that's what was taught to me or exposed to me, or it was second nature. I mean, because when you're young, you follow suit to your parents, you follow suit to examples, you don't know any better.
Right, and you've got that in here. You said my parents raised me as they were raised. And doing the best that they knew how. Now, of course, you didn't always feel that way, right? You were always like, oh. No. But, you know, in the learning, in the healing, you begin to have compassion and understanding of where they came from. And then from their domestication became your domestication.
My domestication. Yeah, I carried it.
Right?
Yeah.
You carried it. But then now you're breaking
the cycles.
Yes. And raising your boys a little different. And then we're gonna moving now into chapter 2. Trauma is a fact of life. It does not happen. It does not, however, have to be a life sentence. That is so vital for people to understand, that there is healing on the other side of any trauma. And coming from a place of trauma and studying trauma, there is no, this trauma is worse than this trauma. Trauma is trauma.
And everybody's is different.
And everyone's is, yes, absolutely. And you don't have to stay in that space. So you go on to share your history of being sexually abused.
Yeah, because that was hard, because at the time, you know, growing up, it was part of what we said in part of the book, you know, lessons that we did with the Warrior Goddess training, is, you know, you were told to be quiet, you were told to not upset people, you were told not to speak, you know, be seen, not heard. And when all that was happening, it was kind of like, I didn't want anybody to know. One, I didn't want to make it seem like it was my fault. I didn't want to bring trouble to the daily thing. But I also didn't want to upset. It would have upset a lot of things. And so I kept it to myself, but I also didn't understand it. It also made me feel strange as a young girl.
I was going to, remind me how old?
I was about 10, 11. It happened right in that age, give or take. It was young. And it was just one of those harmless things that, you know, at that time, people left their children with other people, or they left them in the house without it being locked. It was a different time and place.
70s and 80s.
Yes, it was a totally different time.
Yeah.
And it was people they knew, their neighbors, so it wasn't like anything bad could have or would have, or you would never think it. And when it happened, I was more stunned than I was broken from it yet. But then when it kept happening, then it became like my dirty little secret that I felt bad for.
Now, were you also raised in religion?
Yes, I was raised a Christian, still am a Christian.
Okay.
And so I felt like that was a bad thing too. Because
That's what I was going to ask. Cause
I didn't
was
understand that at the time. My belief in religion at the time was you go to church, you praise God, you give to God, and anything that the Bible says you fall, that's your life lessons. Do what you need to do. I didn't know anything different. It was what we did. And that part of it, I never understood. I couldn't understand any aspect of what was happening. And that was very hard for me to admit. And several things later had transpired over the events and years as I got to be more of a teenager. More sexual things happened in different ways that were not what should have happened. And at the time, I knew they shouldn't happen and I was uncomfortable, but I also felt very ashamed to admit it. I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. I held a lot in. I dealt with a lot of it. It gave me a different outlook towards sex.
Yeah.
That I will say, because my mom and dad wasn't one to really speak and talk about it.
Right.
I was that person that had to figure it out.
Different generation.
And,
what things were talked about
that was not a good way to figure it out.
No.
I didn't know that till later.
Yeah.
I didn't realize till later that wasn't what should have or needed to or was supposed to happen. And when I did, then I was upset and bothered because I was bothered on both counts. One, because I didn't share it, and two, because nothing happened. Yeah. Matter of fact, I never even told that to my parents till I wrote the book. Okay. Oddly enough.
I know for me, when growing up being sexually abused and growing up in the Christian world, it made me feel, I don't know if I want to say extra dirty, because I believed I was going to go to hell.
Yeah.
Because someone had done this to me.
I allowed somebody to do it.
Right.
Was how I felt.
Right. And so now I've been sexually active outside of marriage. I'm a sinner. I'm 9 years old.
Sure.
Having these thoughts.
And that's awful.
Right.
And you don't know
And
what
you
to do.
have
Your brain's not even mature enough to
Yeah,
understand
right.
that.
Right.
So for me, I couldn't even fathom it.
Right.
I didn't know
And
what to do with
how
it.
do you tell your dad
Right.
that this is what's happening when he's the preacher and whoa,
That's,
so
you don't want to cause
power.
disgrace to your family, but
Right.
you also don't want to disgrace yourself, even though you felt it. Yeah, I understand that.
And then on chapter 3 is "They will always be with me," and here's a quote by Tori Amos. It's a miscarriage. All very thief in the night. No one really knows what to say. You go into the emergency room. You think you're going to be a mom, and you walk out empty. It's all neat and tidy. There's this potential being in your life, and you're empty. All cleaned up and put back together, but completely shattered.
Yeah.
What a powerful...
That to me says it all.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you had multiple
I had multiple
miscarriages.
Yes.
And
I felt like that was God's way of punishing me for what happened when I was younger. Yeah. Even though I know better now, at the time, that's not what I thought.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Don't we feel that that punishment?
Yeah.
That we think that,
Well, I couldn't understand why it was happening, and the only way I could justify it was I must deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the hardest one to write.
I'm sure that it was.
It was hard because one of the main reasons is I didn't identify with it until 20, 30 years later.
Yeah. The healing that takes place, it's not immediate.
No.
And the healing journey isn't well, I read the book and I'm healed now.
Right.
Right? No, we read the book, we read it, and we read more,
reread it.
and we
Yeah.
read that same book, and
Yeah.
we're constantly peeling back layers of an
Yeah.
onion.
Yeah. You taught me that.
Right?
Yeah. You're always the student, never the teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told Oliver, my grandson, he's like, oh, he's almost 10 now, but he was probably 5. And he was talking about not wanting to go to school one day. And he's like, I can't wait until I'm no longer a student. And I said, oh, buddy, you will forever be a student. Forever be a student of life.
Right.
Because life is always going to be teaching us lessons.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then we go in to talk about, your story, your first
journeys,
marriage,
yeah.
this first journey. You've done a lot of moving.
Yes.
You guys moved more times than you were alive in
Yeah.
years, right? But what I've loved reading this, and it took me at first when I first reading this, I did not want to start writing in this book. It's such a beautiful book, and then I'm like, I'm like,
funny.
this is this.
Now the quote for this one is one that this is my favorite out of all of it, because this is one that I use daily, because it's a reminder, because and I'll just say it, it's, every experience God gives us, every person He puts in our life is a perfect preparation for the future that only He can see. Carrie Ten Booths. And I have it on a plaque. I can't remember where I got it from or who gave it to me. I'm not sure which. But I do know that when good or bad would happen, I would read it and I'd have to tell myself, okay, you might not like what's happening, but there's a reason. And I would read it and I would tell myself, okay, just don't let it go too long, God, before I figure it out, because it's really bothering me. I would have that little silent prayer and go, can we get there now? Because it's puzzling.
Yes. Yes. But you go in and you talk about your people pleasings here, and you were the yes ma'am, yes,
I was.
whatever
worked
anyone
to make
else
it easy.
needed.
Yeah.
I'm here. We're doing the things.
Yeah, I did it all.
I like this thought for Ashley: to be present in a room full of people actively busy, never knowing you're there. You can be the worst kind of loneliness for someone. Not everyone can embrace the noise and filter through it without feeling ignored, unseen, or validated in their presence. If you can embrace the room without taking it personally and knowing that you are all you need in your life and not have the need for others to complete you, then you are a winner in the game of life. The best gift you can give anyone and yourself is your time and full attention.
Yeah.
Oh,
That, when I wrote that in that journal that morning, I can still remember doing it, because thinking that's all I ever strived for, was somebody to be able to give me their time and attention.
and how can we give that to ourselves?
But if you don't give it to yourself, you can't give it to others. And the other part of that too was I learned that not everybody can. And to have that expectation that everybody in the room or everybody in your life owes it to you is so unrealistic, because they might not be in a place to do so.
They don't have
And that was very hard for me to see, because there's still people in my life, in my entire life, that do not have the capacity, do not know how to. And I had to learn to forgive and understand that, and not take it personally, and understand that if you're sitting in that room, because to this day it still happens, and I could sit in the room and instead of being angry, mad, or resentful, I look at them and go, they can't. And then it's that whole thing, they doing what they know, the best they know how. They don't know any better.
The butterfly and the caterpillar.
That's it. That's it.
A caterpillar does not understand the butterfly language.
Right.
And fortunately, as butterflies, we can still speak caterpillar.
Yes.
Like, we still have
We
that
see
essence.
that because we went through
We
it.
went through that. We went through the muck.
Right.
And so we're able to communicate.
Right. Exactly.
But they're not.
But
they
that's
don't.
not
They're
where
not
they're
ready.
at.
Right.
And if they can't do that, they can't do it for you or them.
Right.
And that was where you had to have compassion and grace.
Mm-hmm.
And when I learned how to do that, I learned how to let go and forgive. And just you look at it through a different lens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we definitely mark our age here when we start talking about Whitesnake.
Oh yeah, no, I almost didn't put it because of it, but then I had to, because it's powerful. I'm sorry, it's just as corny as it is.
It's powerful.
It is that song.
Yeah, I love it.
It does age it, and that's what I said, and I really don't care.
I love right. I know.
It's
I giggled so much.
I'm sure. I was conflicted on putting it because I thought, just do it. My God, it's
Just
part
do
of
it. It's right. And like, but like the power, our messages comes from so many places, and it's so potent to be aware and awake to them.
Yes.
So so in the description here, I will put a link to the Whitesnake song. Here
That's
I go
funny.
again, because maybe you don't even know who Whitesnake
Yeah,
is.
and that's okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But we will introduce you to Whitesnake if that is the
absolutely.
case. And then here you tell Ashley, you must love yourself enough to put yourself first before you can ever truly love another or create a beautiful relationship. And it's because again, I want to go back to like the 4 agreements, the mastery of love. You know, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about how you will only allow someone to abuse you as far as you abuse yourself.
Yeah.
And so when you stop abusing yourself, you will no longer let anyone else abuse you either.
Yeah.
And
you're unaware of it until you're aware of it.
Right. And so the same goes with that love. If you don't love yourself, then there's no way that you're really loving someone else.
No, because you don't know how.
You don't know how. You don't know how. I remember I've asked an old love before, hey, he'll cook me dinner, and then we'll build a fire, and we'll have the most sweetest environment. And I'm like, would you ever do this for yourself, just you? He was like, no. No. Why would I do it for me?
Right. And that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
And
I never thought about that.
Right, and then a couple of months later, he sent me a picture. He'd built himself a fire.
That he had built himself a fire.
I'm like, there you go.
Right? That's sweet.
Right? So we're going to jump into chapter 6, My Cinderella Story. When all you know is fight or flight, red flags and butterflies all feel the same. Cindy Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful and so true to some of the other conversations that we've had, talking in the Warrior Goddess, how when you don't know, you don't know.
You don't know.
And
you can't tell the difference sometimes.
You don't know. You just don't know. So again, this can be triggering for some people here.
Yeah.
This story could be. Because you go into meeting your new husband to be, right?
Yep.
So you and he are married to other people.
Yes, we were. Yes. And it was, one of those kind of, you stumbled into it kind of things. Mm-hmm. And neither one of us expected, if you were to tell me that was going to happen, I'd have laughed at you, because first of all, I didn't find him attractive when I first started working with him. So I wasn't even like drawn. I didn't pay attention to him. He was my boss. I was married. That's the last thing. I couldn't even handle the marriage I was in. Let's look for another.
We're going to add more people.
Why would I add another man to complicate it worse? That was stupid. It didn't make sense. So I wasn't even paying attention to what happened, and I laugh about it now because I think 2 things come out of it. 1, yes, love finds you when you're not looking. Mm. 2, you can never predict anything, and if you're not paying attention, that's when things happen. Mm-hmm. And so both of those kind of came into play later. At the time, I wasn't thinking about it, but it was a friendship made to begin with that turned into a love for both of us. But it was so innocent, and we both felt so bad and so guilty, but it was like kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It's like eating that bowl of ice cream and you love while you're doing it, but then afterwards you're like, damn, that was stupid. Mm-hmm. Then you do it again. And then you do it again. And then you get really obese and go, wait, is it worth it? Wait a minute. Now let's balance that, you know?
Right?
So,
Right?
yeah. It was a beautiful story.
So,
other than that.
So I marked here at the end of this chapter, our spouses watched our moods change as happiness entered our lives again.
Yeah.
It was noticeable that eventually we got caught.
Yeah.
And did all hell break loose when that happened?
Yes.
And so did my nightmares. So you know, again, when I say this can be triggering for people, there's a lot of honesty in this book, and I think it's the beauty and the grace, the humility, being very humble, the very vulnerable, so powerful for what you've put together here. So I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you
for doing this. And here's your thoughts for Ashley, which I think is very potent. Divorce might be a sin in God's eyes. Each person can evaluate that for themselves. I feel when two people stay in a loveless and unhappy marriage, it is a tragedy. When children are a part of the equation in the marriage, it teaches them the wrong things about love and marriage. Follow your heart and never change yourself for anyone. If they truly love you, they will love you just as you are. That authentic self.
Yep.
And so powerful that you gave that message in here, coming from the background that we came from.
Well, because that was a struggle.
Right.
Because I felt guilty for it. He did too. I mean, he's a Christian as well, and we both did. And it was like, we were going against God. You know, we're going against God. And we just kept pulling away, stopping, and what have you. But, you know, on the other side of it, you know, despite what was happening with him and I, my current husband at the time, we were so unhappy. We weren't fighting. The children, our marriage wasn't like about hostile violence, fighting, all that kind of stuff. It was just about roommates, neglect, and this is how it is. And I watched my kids grow older, and as they were growing older, my oldest was like, this is how it is. And then when I watched him treat me the same as my husband, and I wasn't happy about, I just thought, wow, because I struggled with that, because I struggled with, okay, don't have a broken family. Don't divorce and have a broken family. One, it's against God. Two, it's not good. And all the beliefs that I'd learned all my life was just hit me in the face all the time. So every time I would think about it or not like what was happening, those old beliefs would roll in my head, and it was like, that's who you are, you need to do this. But then I'd watch what was happening with my son, and I'm thinking, but that's so wrong. That's not how he should be. This isn't good. He doesn't need to carry this forward, you know, because then it was like, that's not a right lesson, you know. But then how can I go against what your dad's doing, because I'm sitting here, I'm staying with it. I'm acting
You're
like it's
allowing
okay.
it, right?
I'm not speaking my truth here now at all, and that's very controversial. So I struggled with all that, and it was kind of like, it wasn't even just about, you know, the new love of my life. It was about the fact that the other one wasn't serving the purpose for the marriage or the family or my kids. And that was already there before he entered in.
Right.
I mean, it was just,
Because if it had not been there, that wouldn't
I
have
wouldn't
happened.
have even happened, right? Because
And
it was
that's the
already,
truth.
it was,
Right.
that's the truth, because it was so truthful to that. I didn't know what to do about it. Financially, I couldn't do anything about it. We moved so much. I wasn't in a stable place anywhere.
Yeah.
And everything was about him. Everything job-wise was about him. I mean, Lord, I stayed at a job maybe 3 or 4 months at the most. Yeah. So it wasn't like I was stable in anything. Right. But it's like, what do? Life's still happening. Kids are still growing. Before you know it, they're going to be whatever, you know, and then you're going to have to come back after they're grown and go, sorry, but that was the wrong way I taught you. Right. Well, that's awful.
Right.
I mean, and as a child, if my parents told me that, I'd be like, y'all, you're messed up, dude.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't know what to think about it. It was horrible for me to think it. And then I saw little pieces of, you know, repeating habits and stuff that I didn't like as I was a kid. And then all of a sudden he pops up in my life, and it's a whole nother deal. And I remember I was so mad and aggravated, because I'm like, you are the last thing I need right now. You know, I mean, really? Why does it really? Yeah. But then it, God had a purpose. Yeah. It worked out for a reason.
Yeah. So going into the Great Awakening, I labeled this the fallout. And so, and I underlined this part, of your husband made you go to the preacher to
Oh.
ask for repentance.
That was the most awfulest thing. That was my ex-husband and my husband at the time.
Right.
Let me tell you, that
like how humiliating.
you talk about, that was probably the most humiliating thing I've ever done, ever. And I can't even believe I did it. I'm not really sure why I did it, other than
People
felt
pleasing.
complete, probably.
People pleasing.
But that was the most humiliating thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It really, and the saddest part is I loved that preacher. We'd gone to church there forever, and I never saw that side of him. And the bad part is I sat in that office for 2 hours that night, and I just gotten beat by him.
Beat down.
And his wife sat on the outside listening. And when I left, I was so upset and so humiliated. And she couldn't even look at me. And I had their kids like in Wednesday nights and stuff, and I'm thinking, there's no way I can do. It changed everything when that happened. And I'm assuming his motive was to like guilt me back into the marriage and make me feel bad, which I'm not really sure how that would have done that, but I don't really know. All I know is I did it. And then it was like, holy hell after that with everybody else in my life. And I went from the Cinderella feeling great about what was happening to all of a sudden like the worst Jezebel in the place of Lord. I felt worse than a whore. You know, they had been with a million men. And I'm thinking, oh my God, people, I really wasn't that bad. That really isn't Jesus, really?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you really know the truth, it really wasn't like all that, like that bad, you know? But no, he was just hurt.
Yeah.
And I understood it. Why I did it, I don't know, but it was the most humiliating thing I ever did. Ever did.
And then, let's see. Oh, I love you've got the doormat. I just saw a doormat, and I'm like, whoa, there we are.
I admitted it.
So I think that was part of the beauty in this was seeing 4 agreements, warrior goddess. There's even a part where I went, oh, this is Rise, Sister Rise.
See?
Right? And I'm like,
I paid attention. I was a good student.
You were. You
taught me well.
And then, so you and the first husband get divorced.
Right.
And then, so from divorce, you and your boys then move in?
Not right away.
Okay.
There's a year in between.
A year in between, because he's going through divorce as well now.
Right. He took a year almost, so I promised my ex-husband that I'd give it a year for multiple reasons. 1, for the children. 2, I wasn't going to get with the new love until he was divorced. I didn't feel right in moving in with him until we were legit. That I still held, whether it was just me, religion, or whatever. Couldn't tell you, but that's just how I felt. I also knew that I needed to know like the whole situation better than what it was. And I also needed time for my children because my children were playing devil's advocate with both my ex-husband and I. That wasn't fair. You know, it's not their fault. It wasn't their fault that things happened. And they did think it was their fault. So I felt like I needed it for them. So I took it for a year. He was still married. She was relentlessly not getting him a divorce because she didn't want to see it happen. And so there was a lot going on that didn't need to happen like that. So a year went by.
Okay.
And then we got married.
So in that year, did y'all still date?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We were discreet with it. I mean, we didn't like force it, do it, whatever, you know, with the children. Yeah, we didn't. And I continued doing homeschool. I continued doing what I was doing. Okay. And yeah, it wasn't bad. Beautiful. I actually enjoyed it was the first time I'd been alone to do my own thing. And that was actually pretty liberating. Nice. It's pretty liberating.
Beautiful. And then you guys get married. And, a few rocks.
Yeah, that's nicely put.
Right, a few rocks come in the way. Made a little difficulties.
Yeah, slightly. Yeah.
But then you had the incident.
Yeah.
Then we had the incident.
Yeah.
And so the ex-wife has some mental issues.
Yeah.
And so she, remind me, is she bipolar?
Yes.
She's bipolar. And so she showed up y'all are married,
Right.
y'all are living together, the home.
It never sunk into her, and the reality of it was never her reality yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it was a bad time for her, and it was triggering for her because we had gone through tornadoes. She had gone through issues with her parents not feeling well. Her mom was not doing well at all. A whole lot of life traumas were happening for her and with her. And in addition to not wrapping her head around what was happening, it was a flip of a switch that it was everything, for whatever reason that day, triggered her to be emotionally vulnerable to everything that was stinging and hurting. And when it did, she reacted in a way that was not comfortable to us and our family. Yeah. And it pretty much traumatized everybody at that moment. And I felt guilty when it happened because I felt guilty for my kids. I felt like if I would have never done what I did, you wouldn't be sitting right here. I did. I felt guilty right out the gate. I was mad at her for doing it to them, not for me and him, but for them, because they didn't deserve that.
Right.
And I felt bad for her son because that was awful for him. He was very young.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when it happened because I was mad and angry over what happened. But then it didn't take me very long to be compassionate to understand why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was human like anybody else.
Right.
And having the mental illness doesn't necessarily mean that normal people that don't have it can't. And I realized that even though that is a part of the equation, it wouldn't have mattered if she had it or not. It was a lot for somebody to go through to process. And
Yes.
some can handle things better than others.
Right.
Some cannot, regardless of what the situation is.
Exactly.
I felt compassion and sympathy toward her for it, and I'm not really sure where it came from because I was very resentful and mad and angry for a long time. But when it happened, I was able to forgive her and forget, and that was incredible. But it stung and it shook our family up quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Scary. It was a scary situation.
It was a very scary situation.
Yeah. And then as that, at the other side of that is when you began to start looking for some healing for you.
Yeah.
You started your...
Everything shut down after that happened.
Right.
Everything
it was
just, I had held so much in that I felt for so many situations, people, and so much had happened by that point. And it all happened so fast that I wasn't processing it. It was like we were going through the mundane. Every day there was something, and it was always awful, and it wasn't good. And it went from great story, to all of a sudden, oh my God, this is like reality, and this is a lot of reality, and this is a lot of stuff. And I held it all in, and my body started taking the toll with that.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it. And I shut down mentally and physically.
Yeah. And then you reached out to me.
I did.
And what's interesting is when, and you mentioned this in the book, like when you called, you were like, hey, maybe I want to start doing private yoga lessons. And I'm like, well, maybe I want to teach them. I don't know.
You weren't in a place either. You said it later.
I hadn't been feeling well. I'd been having some health issues, and so I had been pulled away from that.
Right.
I wasn't sure that I wanted to come back to that.
Yeah.
But then I also believe entirely that spirit, universe, source, whatever name you give it, lines things up.
That's where I said
Right.
it too.
And so
Things happen for a reason.
we scheduled our first appointment and took off.
Yeah.
And it's been a few years.
It's been quite a few years, actually.
Yeah.
I was trying to think about that the other day.
4 now.
Is it 4?
I think so.
Yeah.
And so you were a beautifully written stories here about our work that we did. We came in for yoga, but you got much more than yoga.
I got a whole lot more.
Because I immediately introduced you to Warrior Goddess training.
Yeah.
And so we worked through Warrior Goddess, and we talked about the different bodies, the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the energy body. And every lesson, every time you came in, we started our session
We
that
did,
way.
yes.
Like, we're going to do a check-in. How are we feeling? What's going
Yes.
on?
And that was so enlightening to me.
right.
It was so much more. And that's when I discovered how much power you had for yourself and how much control you had. And and it's so funny because there were so many times I'd come in angry or upset or mad from whatever had happened. And you would just politely and quietly and very gracefully just walk me through it. And at the end, I'm like, okay, that was easy. Why did I not do this? And I was so grateful because I remember so many times I'd sit out in my car and go, thank you.
Beautiful. And we brought in the Louise Hayes, How You Can Heal Your Life.
I'm so mad at you for that. I can still remember that day. I remember sitting in here, and I think what bothered me the most is I had it in my head. And I remember it was like I discussed my feet, my hips, and my neck. And I remember in my head, I had it like, okay, it's hereditary. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. And then you were like, no, it's not. And let me, read this and show you. And I was like, it can't be that easy. I've had this all this time and it's that easy. And I remember buying the book. I remember going home, and I can still remember my husband sitting in his chair, and I was sitting here. I didn't even said, hi, how are you? That was it. Walked straight in, sat down, and started looking at the book because I was curious. Because I couldn't read and write or read it on the way home. So I got home, and I read it, and I was And every time I flipped it and realized what it was and what I had to do and how simple it was, or so it seemed, I was just getting madder. And he goes, good session? And I remember, enlightening. And that's all I said. And he goes, obviously not to suit you. And I went, and I remember just going, And I wouldn't make eye contact and I wouldn't say anything. And he goes, okay. And I said, I just sat there and I went, I just got informed of things that I didn't want to be informed with, that I need to help myself with, that I already should have, and I don't want to, and I have to. And yeah. And he goes, okay. And he goes, I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to go outside. And I went, thanks. And I remember just sitting there going,
oh, I love it.
And the funny thing is I've shown that book to 2 or 3 other people. And I did the same approach you did. And all of them got mad too. And I was like, then that works.
Right. But feel it. Feel that passion.
When you feel it, you're just like, oh yeah, it worked. Yeah.
Like, this is just full of great information.
Thank you.
You built your Zen den.
I did.
And, so you created a space at home where you could be alone, you could meditate, you could do yoga, you could paint.
Yes.
You could do your things.
Yes.
And the shift at home changed.
It did. Everything changed. Yes. Everything changed. I took back my power and took back my time and my energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
in a way I wanted to.
Right. And then the interactions with husband, ex-husband, and the boys.
Everything
all of it
changed.
shifted, right?
Yeah. One of the biggest things with my ex-husband was reframing the past. Instead of being upset with things that had happened, I reframed it in a way to understand. And I learned that from Warrior Goddess. Because when she has that lesson, I can't remember which lesson it is, but whenever that one hit me with it, the first thing came to my mind was how I told the story. And it was similar to what she had talked about with her travels, but mine was the moving too.
Yeah.
And I took what she said and I redid it, and I put it in a perspective of what did this teach me and what did I learn good out of it. And as soon as I did that, my thoughts for him and my past for him and my feelings totally shifted. And it was at that moment that our relationship shifted. And I mean, him and I have a great relationship. We're open, we're honest. We have come to terms with each other over the last few years that both of it was our fault. Both took account for what we did.
Beautiful.
What he lacked, what I lacked, what we didn't communicate. I said I was sorry for not being truthful. He was sorry for doing the same. I mean, but we both at the end wanted everybody to be happy. But we are at peace with where each other is. And that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And that said a lot.
Yeah.
I did the same with my mom and I's relationship. I reframed where she came from with it. Instead of being upset and broken and hurt, I realized she did the best she could with what she had and where she was coming from. You taught me that.
Yeah.
So it was beautiful with a lot of the relationship change.
Yeah.
And you soften when you do that. I
You
was
do.
such a hard shell inside and out
do.
that I wouldn't let anything come in. And when I softened, it was easier. And that
There
was
is
powerful.
such strength in being soft.
Yeah.
Mm.
You don't have to give it all away.
No.
But you do have to be vulnerable enough to accept.
I'm over here on chapter 18. Thank you for my anger. And the quote here. And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through it, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure the storm is really over.
Right.
But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. And that is what the storm is all about.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Yeah. It's funny because just yesterday, actually the day before yesterday, we were open at the restaurant. The gentleman that I mentioned in this book about the 4 agreements that he told me about, he came into the restaurant, and I told him when I published the book, and I mentioned a long time ago that he had a little part in it, because I joked about that, because I did just like, I don't want to read that, I don't want to read that. Then I was made to read it, and I was like, you need to be happy to know, and I remember it. So he came in not too long, just a couple days ago, and I showed him the book, because I hadn't seen him this season. And he goes, it's beautiful, and he looked at it, complimented and everything, and his exact words were, you can tell you're a different person. And that made me think about that quote, because I was like, not only do I know it and feel it, but people recognize it.
Absolutely.
And I just thought, that's good. That's great.
I love how you list some of your ailments and then what you found and looking them up. And then what I noticed was how the quotes, where they began, the thoughts began for Ashley, they changed to being for yourself.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I love how it's like, this is a beautiful painting of your journey, your healing journey.
It was.
Absolutely. Is there anything else in here? Because like, there's just so much.
There's so much.
It's just so like, this is such a beautiful, very well put together.
Thank you.
Very well put together, about this journey and your connections.
I wish I could have gone deper in a whole lot of it, and part of me wishes I would have.
That means
But
that's like book 2, 3, 4, and 10.
Well, maybe not that many. I don't know.
Right?
We'll see. But definitely one more. I don't know
Right.
about the rest, but yes. Yeah, because there's so much more.
There is, and and it's just talking about peeling off your layers, and that this would be a lifetime journey.
It is, and it will.
And so I am so grateful for you to share this
Absolutely.
with not just me, but the world.
Yes.
And I'm just incomplete. I love the book,
Thank you.
and like I said, we're going to drop the links to where to get the book, and it's on Amazon.
It
right?
is, yes.
It's on Amazon, and you also have an Etsy.
I do.
An Etsy for your art,
For my
right?
art. Sunshine for your soul.
So we'll drop that link too, so
Okay.
you can check those out. Because
Yes.
I'm sure I mentioned, like, Lori painted this. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, so beautiful artist. Is there anything else?
I just want to tell you thank you. Because without you, I wouldn't have had the book.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I am so grateful for our
Encounter.
journeys, our paths crossing,
Exactly.
and I'm just excited to see where all it goes.
am
Because
too.
even though you're not a private yoga client that comes every week anymore,
No.
we still
get together and we
connect.
need to.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, I've been teaching and learning online how to.
Good.
Because I feel like that's part of what my future is going to hold. Because I have to share it in a different way too. And not just by words.
Yes.
I don't know how, and I don't really care how.
Right.
I'm just learning for myself and learning to say, hey, you know what? I have this now too to fall back on.
I love it.
And I'm going to see where the journey rolls. I figured you'd be proud.
Yay.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I am proud to.
Beautiful.
We'll see what happens.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching and listening. And I will put all of Lori's connections in the description. And
Works.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you'll see us again, I know, with another book and another lesson somewhere down the road.